let's get into one of the most fundamental and, frankly, messiest stories of civilization, our long and deeply ironic relationship with our own waste. It's a story of incredible genius, followed by 1,000 years of, well, forgetting all of it. And it all ends with a crisis that literally brought a city to its knees and its nose. So let's just start with the central paradox of this whole story. What could a palace from 4,000 years ago possibly have that the heart of the Industrial Revolution, the biggest, most powerful empire on Earth, was missing? The answer is shockingly simple: a working toilet, and maybe more importantly, a sewer system that wasn't also your main source of drinking water. You heard that right. You know, we tend to think of history as this nice, straight line of progress. But when it comes to sanitation, oh, the story is anything but. Our journey starts by looking back at ancient cultures that were, in a lot of ways, way cleaner than their descendants thousands of years later. This quote, it just captures a moment of pure disbelief. So picture this. It's 1907. An archaeologist named Angelo Mosso is standing in the ruins of an ancient Minoan villa on Crete. After a big rainstorm, he just watches, totally dumbfounded, as the 4,000-year-old sewer system kicks in and works perfectly 4 millennia later. I mean, that's the kind of engineering we're talking about here. Yeah, the Minoans weren't just digging ditches. They had the very first known flush toilets. At the Palace of Knossos, they engineered this amazing system to capture rainwater from the roofs and then use that water to flush out sewage. They had terracotta pipes, separate septic systems for their baths. They even designed drainage to prevent erosion. This is some seriously sophisticated, thoughtful civil engineering, and it's from 2000 BC. And this wasn't some fluke on a Greek island. Halfway across the world, in the Indus Valley, archaeologists have found ancient cities with houses that had bathrooms and toilets connected directly to a covered, citywide drainage network that ran under the streets. Again, we're talking thousands of years before this became the norm in Europe. This slide just perfectly illustrates the peak right before the fall. I mean, look at the Romans. They built the Cloaca Maxima, the greatest sewer, an absolute marvel of engineering. They recycled water from public baths to flush communal latrines, which, get this, were actual social hubs. By 100 AD, there were even laws requiring homes to connect to the system. For them, this stuff was a point of civic pride. And this knowledge wasn't just stuck in Rome. Just look at the scale of these sewers from ancient Greece. This wasn't some minor hidden utility. These were monumental public works. The ability to build healthy, functional cities was surprisingly widespread in the ancient world. And then, it was all lost. So, after the fall of Rome, Europe entered this long, incredibly filthy period. All that amazing engineering knowledge of the ancients, it just vanished. And what followed was a regression so complete, it's honestly hard to even wrap your head around. This quote from the famous diarist Samuel Pepys, it says everything you need to know. He went down into his own cellar in London, only to find that his neighbor's overflowing cesspit had broken through the wall. And this wasn't some slum. This was the home of a prominent, well-to-do administrator in the 17th century. That was just reality. So, what went so wrong? Well, pretty much everything. Walled medieval cities literally trapped all the waste inside with the people. Their go-to solution, the cesspit, was often dug right next to the drinking wells. Yikes. Even in fancy castles, the garderobes were just chutes that dropped waste straight into the moat. Their most advanced solution? Hiring guys called night soil men to shovel out the pits by hand. And all of this filth, it came at a cost. A staggering one. Epidemics like cholera and the plague absolutely flourished in these conditions, wiping out an estimated quarter of Europe's entire population. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a catastrophe on an almost unimaginable scale. You'd think the Renaissance, with its big rediscovery of classical knowledge, would fix things, right? But while artists and scientists were reaching these incredible new heights, the cities they lived in stank. While King Louis XIV was building the magnificent fountains of Versailles, the streets of Paris were literally overflowing with filth. Progress, as it turns out, was not evenly distributed. Okay, so this brings us to the 19th century. The Industrial Revolution hits, and cities like London just explode in population. So you've got all these people crammed together using sanitation methods that hadn't really improved in 1,500 years. It was a ticking time bomb. And right on cue, a symbol of Victorian progress appears, the flushing toilet. It was a huge sensation at the Great Exhibition of 1851, an absolute must-have for any modern middle-class home. It really promised a new era of cleanliness and convenience. So this was the solution, wasn't it? Finally, after centuries of filth, a clean, modern piece of technology to just wash it all away. Nope, it was a complete disaster. The flush toilet, this brilliant piece of tech in a vacuum, was introduced into a city that had absolutely no system to handle it. It was like inventing a Ferrari but having no roads. Okay, so here's why it failed so spectacularly. All that extra water from flushing just overwhelmed the old cesspits, causing them to back up into people's homes, just like what happened to Samuel Pepys. And for those who were connected to the city's primitive sewers, it just meant that enormous volumes of raw sewage were washed into the River Thames more efficiently than ever before. And the Thames, that was where most of London got its drinking water. The results were deadly. Even before the infamous Great Stink of 1858 happened, a single cholera outbreak back in '49 killed over 10,000 people. The connection between the contaminated Thames and the disease was becoming terrifyingly, horribly clear. This description from the Times, it paints a truly hellish picture of the river. The sheer volume of waste was so great that during the really hot summer of 1858, the stench became so overpowering it became known as the Great Stink. It got so bad that Parliament had to drape its windows in sheets soaked in chemicals just to be able to conduct business. The crisis had finally become impossible to ignore. Spurred to action by the Great Stink, Parliament finally gave the green light to a solution that had been on the table for years. The man in charge was a civil engineer named Joseph Bazalgette, and his vision was nothing short of heroic. The plan itself was just genius in its scale and simplicity. Bazalgette would build these massive interceptor sewers running parallel to the Thames, catching all the city's waste before it ever reached the river. From there, huge pumping stations would send it all far downstream, where it would be released into the estuary on the outgoing tide. And you know what? It worked. Cholera practically vanished from London. The stench was gone. But there was a catch. Bazalgette's system didn't treat the sewage. It just moved it. This led to a famous tragedy in 1878 when a pleasure boat sank right where millions of gallons of raw sewage had just been dumped, costing 650 lives. The disaster really highlighted that just moving the problem wasn't enough. Treatment was the crucial next step. Which brings us to today. The scale of the problem Bazalgette faced has just multiplied exponentially. Right now, humanity produces an estimated 400 billion kilograms of excrement every single year, and the systems we rely on are the direct descendants of the one Bazalgette built. And this all leads to a really crucial question. We solved the crisis of the 19th century, a crisis that was born from forgetting what our ancient ancestors already knew. But today, billions of people around the world still don't have access to basic sanitation. This whole story is a powerful reminder that progress is never guaranteed, and that the hidden systems protecting our health are some of our most important achievements. So, have we truly won the war on waste? Or is the next great challenge just around the bend?